Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. You all know me. I'm Dr. Mahadi Abdur Rouf from the Department of Physiology. Today, I'd like to talk about one of the important topics of nervous system, the cerebellum. What you are going to read from this vast topic, the cerebellum. The questions that used to come in the professional examinations are the functional divisions of cerebellum and then the neuronal circuits of cerebellum. So while you read the neuronal circuits of cerebellum, you are to read about the deep nuclei, the connections, the inputs and the outputs, and the diseases related to the cerebellum. That's it. So let us start about the cerebellum. Now, as you can see in the screen is the cerebellum. Now, cerebellum is called a small brain within the big brain, or people used to call little brain, because cerebellum might be small in size, but packs a powerful punch when it comes to its function. And in physiology, the functions of cerebellum is very, very important. How will you tell the functions? You can tell the functions as a whole, or you can functionally divide the cerebellum and you can tell each functions from the division. So why cerebellum is important? Because cerebellum is called the master of coordination. The cerebellum is the king of movement or the maestro of movement, which is responsible for coordinating balance, posture, and fine motor skills. Like you can precisely write down something, or you can walk in a fine way, you can dance, or even when you are sporting. All these moments are deliberately associated with cerebellum. And here, the cerebellum functions with motor cortex, the cerebral cortex. So all the commands you are giving, they are produced from the cerebral cortex, but all this fine tuning, they are done by the help of cerebellum. Now, I'd like to share another fascinating information with you. That is the volume of cerebellum. It accounts only for about 10% of your brain's volume. But the cerebellum contains 50 to 80% of your brain's neurons. So it is packed with neurons. This is the reason why you need to know the cells of the cerebellum, which I will disclose to you later. I mean, very shortly. Now, as you know, it is the largest part of the hindbrain since it resides behind the pons, medulla, and the fourth ventricle over here. Okay. It consists of two cerebellar hemisphere, sorry. And the cerebellum is connected to the main brain. I mean, it is connected to the brain stem by three peduncles. Okay. Now it has three lobes: anterior lobe, posterior lobe, and flocculonodular lobe. This is a good figure of cerebellum. This is anterior lobe, posterior lobe, and this tiny area, it is flocculonodular lobe. This is a lateral view. Now, these pictures I have taken from Guyton as well. On my right side, this picture resembles the posterior inferior side of the cerebellum. You can see the stacks, no? It's like folded tissue papers. So the cerebellum is dense. It is densely packed with neurons. Now, in the central portion, this is known as the vermis. On both sides of the vermis, this area or zone is known as intermediate zone. And besides the intermediate zone, we find the lateral zone. This is a big zone, the lateral zone. Talking about the lobe, on the top of this figure, it is anterior lobe. And just below this fissure, we find the posterior lobe. It extends up to the flocculonodular lobe. Functionally, cerebellum is divided into three parts: vestibulocerebellum, spinocerebellum, and cerebrocerebellum. And on embryological basis, it is archaeocerebellum, paleocerebellum, and neocerebellum. This is the same picture showing the lobes and zones of cerebellum. Now, most often cerebellum is called the silent area of the brain, though it is associated with the motor functions from the brain, but cerebellum itself does not cause any motor activity. Rather, it tunes the motor activity, the motor signals that come from the motor cortex. So electrical stimulation given to the cerebellum causes no sensation or motor movement. Hence, it is called the silent area. And if the cerebellum is removed, of course, there will be movement, but the movements will be highly abnormal. Now, as a whole, what are the functions of cerebellum? As you can see, the first point, it helps to coordinate patterns of movement. I'm telling again, patterns of movement involving hands and feet. For example, rapid movement like running, typing. Second, helps cerebral cortex to plan, timing, and sequencing the next successive movement. It is not then, it will be sequencing the next successive movement. Third point, important role of the cerebellum is on posture, reflex control, modulation, and coordination of motor acts. So as a whole, these are the functions of cerebellum. But you can easily tell the functions depending on the functional parts. See, vestibulocerebellum. The vestibulocerebellum is composed of the flocculonodular lobe, nodules in vermis, and flanking flocculus in the vermis. Phylogenetically, it is the oldest part of the cerebellum. And the vestibulocerebellum is connected with the vestibular nuclei. What about the spinocerebellum? The intermediate zone of hemisphere, that is the sides on both sides of the vermis. So it consists of vermis and adjacent medial portion. What does it do? It controls the distal portion of upper and lower limbs, that is hands and fingers, feet and toes. Topographically, vermis is the axial region of the cerebellum. I mean, it controls the axial region, the axial muscles of the body. And the zone beside this vermis, the intermediate zone, it controls the limbs. This is a beautiful picture I have taken from Ganong, and self-explaining figure. You can see here, this is the vermis, right? This is the flocculonodular lobe, and this is the intermediate zone. See, the output, this is the spinocerebellum, right? The vermis plus the intermediate zone. So from the vermis, the output signal goes to the medial descending system, and from the intermediate zone, it goes to the lateral descending system. This is how the motor executions are influenced. Now, this most outer part, that this is the lateral zone, from these portions, the fiber goes to motor and premotor cortex, cortices, the plural of cortex. So this area, they are responsible for motor planning because they have their communication with the cerebral cortex, the motor and premotor cortices. From the flocculonodular lobe, it goes, as I said, this is the vestibulocerebellum. It goes to the vestibular nuclei. And the vestibular nuclei is responsible for balance and the eye movements with the balance. So this is spinocerebellum, this is cerebrocerebellum, and this is vestibulocerebellum. Cerebrocerebellum. Now let us learn individually. The cerebrocerebellum, it is the lateral zone, lateralmost part of the hemisphere. It is the largest and highly developed, and there is no direct afferent connection from periphery. Efferents from this area goes to premotor, as I said before, premotor and primary and somatosensory association cortex. It associates cortex with overall planning of sequential movement. And lack of activity of this area, this cerebrocerebellum, it results in loss of timing and sequence in coordinated movement. Now let us learn about the connections of cerebellum. See, the afferent, they go through the middle cerebellar peduncle, also through inferior cerebellar peduncle, and from the superior cerebellar peduncle, the outputs, these are the efferent fibers. So inputs are through middle and inferior cerebellar peduncle, and the output is through superior cerebellar peduncle. It is an important notion for multiple choice question or even single best answer type of question. Now, these are the afferent tracts. Afferent means cerebellum is receiving signals through these tracts. So, first one is olivocerebellar tract from the inferior olive nucleus to the cerebellum. So it transmits mostly proprioceptive inputs from the whole body. And now, next, the vestibulocerebellum. You can assume that the origin is from the vestibular apparatus, right? And the vestibular nuclei. So the destination is flocculonodular lobe and the fastigial nucleus. Next, the reticulocerebellar tract. The cerebellum receives signal from the reticular formation. The destination is the vermis and transmits information regarding initiation of the movement. And there are two other tracts, the dorsal spinocerebellar tract and the ventral spinocerebellar tract. So these tracts, they originate from muscle spindle, Golgi tendon apparatus, and joint receptors. The dorsal spinocerebellar tract goes to vermis and intermediate zone, and ventral spinocerebellar tract, they end up in both sides of the cerebellum as a whole. Both the tracts, they contain proprioceptive and exteroceptive impulses from the body. Let us learn the output signals, the efferent tracts. Okay, so efferent tracts are three in number. The fastigio-vestibular tract. So why it is called fastigio-vestibular? Because the name of one of the deep nuclei is fastigial nucleus. So the origin is fastigial nucleus. Destination is vestibular apparatus, brainstem, and vestibular nuclei. And this fastigio-vestibular tract, well, the function of this tract is, this efferent signal is to control equilibrium. The next is fastigio-reticular. Same, from the fastigial nucleus, ends up in reticular formation of brainstem. This controls postural attitude of the body. Third, one of the important nuclei, that is the dentate nuclei. So it is dentothalamic tract. Well, the name tells that it initiates from the dentate nucleus and it ends into the ventrolateral and ventro-anterior nuclei of the thalamus and then to the cerebral cortex. What is the function? To coordinate reciprocal contractions of agonist and antagonist muscle. Again, to coordinate reciprocal means just opposite. Reciprocal contractions of agonist and antagonist muscle. So the axons of now, as I said, that there are important 5 cells in the cerebellum. One of the cell is Purkinje cell. The axons of Purkinje cell, they synapse directly to one of the deep nuclei. There are 4 deep nuclei. I'll talk about the deep nuclei later. And then from the deep nuclei to a corresponding area of the cerebellar cortex overlying the deep nucleus. Situation of the cortex is above the deep nucleus. And fibers from the fastigial nucleus goes to inferior cerebellar peduncle to globose, dentate, and embryoniform nuclei. So you can know the names of the deep nuclei. Na? They're fastigial, globose, dentate, and emboliform. This is the neuronal circuit of the cerebellum. And this is a very important question that comes in the written examination. Take a good look at the figure. So this blue area or the object, it is deep nuclear cell. Okay. So the output is from the deep nuclear cell. Now, take a look at here. The cortex is made up of molecular layer, Purkinje cell layer, granule cell layer. And just beneath this cortex, we find the deep nuclei. So how the communication is happening? The plus sign means stimulatory, and the minus or negative sign means inhibitory. So the Purkinje cells always inhibits the deep nuclei. But the molecular layer receives signal from the inferior olive, and these are called climbing fibers. So it is the input, right? So from the inferior olive, the climbing fiber goes to molecular layer. While approaching towards the molecular layer, they give a branch, stimulatory branch to the deep nuclei. See? So this is the climbing fiber. Now, take a look at the another fiber. Okay, it is called mossy fiber. Now, the inputs, except from inferior olive, they go to the granule cells. While going to the granule cells, they give a branch to the deep nuclei, and they're stimulatory. So the inputs are stimulatory to the deep nuclei, and the only inhibitory cell is the Purkinje cell. And from the deep nuclei, we get the output from the cerebellum. This is the neuronal circuits of the cerebellum. So thank you very much for your patient hearing. I'd like to end the lecture for today. And I hope very shortly, I will take the second part of this cerebellum. Thank you very much. See you soon.